Welcome to Fiction Stories Read Aloud, your cozy corner of the internet for immersive tales, tender moments, and calming narration. Whether you're here to relax, unwind, or drift off to sleep, you're in the right place. Tonight's story is just one of many we've curated to help you escape into a world of imagination at the pace your heart can handle. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, take a moment to like the video and subscribe so you never miss the next one. So settle in, get comfortable, and let the story carry you somewhere softer.
Chapter 1. If Lady Cecilia Greymore had learnt anything during her widowhood, it was that scandal was less like a fire and more like fog. Not immediate, not explosive, but suffocating, lingering in the corners of every conversation, until you couldn't breathe without tasting it. And today it hung thick over Greymore Hall. The house itself seemed to know it. The corridors creaked more spitefully than usual. The portraits leaned a little closer, as though eager for gossip. Even the grandfather clock ticked with exaggerated judgment, its chimes unusually sharp that morning. Cecilia muttered,
"I swear on all the saints, if you so much as sniff at another letter from Aunt Iris about the state of our roof, I shall throw myself off it."
She leafed through a stack of correspondence at the breakfast table. The paper smelled faintly of lavender and desperation, and she was almost certain she could see judgment dripping from the wax seal. Honoria peeking out from behind her teacup.
"It does leak."
"Yes, but only when it rains. How very unoriginal of it."
"Then perhaps it's the perfect metaphor for our finances. Predictably tragic."
"You read too many novels."
"You write them."
Cecilia nearly dropped her fork.
"I do not."
Honoria innocently states,
"Satirical pamphlets are practically novels, only meaner."
"I am entirely unsure what you mean. And if I were you, I'd practice pretending you never said it."
The maid, Mary, entered, carrying a tray of boiled eggs and a knowing smile. She laid out the breakfast with the theatrical air of a woman aware she worked in the home of a local legend and took quiet pleasure in it. The dining room windows rattled in their frames as the wind picked up. Beyond them, the gardens lay brittle and bare, their former grandeur asleep beneath layers of frost and neglect. Once, Greymore Hall had hosted garden parties so grand that even the Duchess of Cornwall had commented, albeit with a sniff, that the geraniums were tolerable. Outside, the morning mist still clung to the grounds like an uninvited guest who wouldn't take the hint. Cecilia wrapped a shawl tightly around her shoulders and made her way toward the stables, hoping the cold air would shake off her simmering irritation. Instead, it ushered in another memory. Ink-stained hands. Late-night drafts signed only with a flourish. The Wasp. Writing had started as a way to survive her late husband's patronising lectures and tedious hunting friends. After his death, a regrettably theatrical accident involving a fencing foil and a misplaced chamber pot, her words had become a shield, a weapon, a way to speak when polite society expected silence, and now one of her quips had gone too far. The latest pamphlet, The Second Son's Guide to Scandal, had mocked a certain naval officer who'd bedded half the coast of Naples and accidentally insulted the Queen of Denmark. It had, to her knowledge, gone viral in the parlours of Mayfair. She had not expected the subject of her satire to be exiled directly to her doorstep, which is exactly where Captain Miles Everley now stood. Soaked through from the journey, shirt open at the throat, one eyebrow raised as if greeting both the estate and the absurdity of fate. Miles smirks charmingly.
"Lady Cecilia, I'm here to be reformed."
"Is that what they're calling it now?"
"What would you prefer?"
"Exile. Shame. Character rehabilitation through forced rusticity."
"I like exile. Has the right sting to it."
"And what exactly do you intend to do while in exile?"
"Try not to cause another pamphlet."
She nearly choked, but she smiled, briefly, then scowled to cover it.
"I assume you're here to see the steward?"
No steward replied. "Just your aunt." who suggested you might need a man with a ledger.
And do you possess one?
He pulled a small, battered book from his coat pocket.
Somewhere between accounts and poetry. Depends on the day.
Of course it did.
This way, Captain.
He followed her down the gravel path toward the west wing, boots crunching behind her like punctuation. They passed the frost-bitten hedgerows and the statuary garden, which now resembled a poorly organised ghost convention. A crow cawed overhead. The universe, as usual, lacked subtlety. Miles casually remarked,
This isn't my first disgrace, but it may be the prettiest.
You flatter the architecture.
I was talking about you.
Cecilia stopped short. He walked past her, as if he hadn't just lobbed a flirtation into the air like a grenade. Inside, Hetty Templeton was waiting with a pot of oversteeped tea and a knowing smirk.
Ah, the scoundrel. Come to ruin us all with rakish smiles and accounting skills. Or
Miles bows.
Only if invited.
He's here to help. Allegedly.
well, someone had better help you. Your debts have debts.
They sat around the old study table. Cecilia watched him review the estate records with a surprising amount of focus. He asked smart questions, wrote with his left hand, tapped the table when thinking. Infuriatingly competent. At lunch, he declined pheasant and requested eggs. Cecilia tried not to admire his restraint. At tea, he reorganised the pantry. By supper, he had mapped out the orchard's yield-to-labour ratio. He even suggested an improvement to the henhouse ventilation. The hens, apparently, were too hot to lay. Hetty watching from the window.
That man is either a gift from the heavens or the devil in boots.
Is there a third option?
Possibly, but I doubt he's celibate.
Cecilia choked on her tea. Later, she found Miles in the library, leafing through a dusty atlas with surprising tenderness.
Looking for your next escape?
Just revisiting old places. Memory gets slippery when no one else was there to verify it.
Something about that quiet honesty unnerved her more than all his flirtation. He stood then, tall and self-assured.
We can make this work, if you're willing to host a summer gathering, for investors.
A party. You want me to fundraise with punch and polite conversation.
Number, I want you to weaponize your reputation. People would kill to be invited to Greymore Hall right now.
Because they think I murdered my husband?
Because you might have, and because you're interesting. People are starving for interesting.
Hetty cackled.
He has a point.
Cecilia stared at him. This man, this second son, exiled for scandal and charm, might just be the solution she didn't want.
Fine, but I choose the guest list.
Deal. And I'll keep the flirtation to a minimum.
See that you do.
But later that night, she found herself scribbling a new pamphlet title in the margin of her notebook. The Perils of Pretending Not to be Curious. Chapter 2. Miles Everley had survived cannon fire, typhoons, and once a week-long diplomatic dinner with a baroness who thought the Americas were fictional. None of it had prepared him for the sheer force of Lady Cecilia Greymore's disapproval, which, to be fair, she wielded like a rapier. He'd only been at Greymore Hall for one day and had already reorganised the pantry, avoided a pheasant, and been accused, correctly, of excessive charm. It was a record, even for him. Still, he hadn't expected to enjoy it quite so much. He stood in the library the next morning, running a finger along the spines of books worn from actual reading rather than decoration. This, he thought, was the kind of home people built with their hands and defended with their wit. A door creaked open behind him. Miles turning.
I'm not hiding.
I didn't accuse you of hiding.
You were going to...
I was going to ask whether you'd frightened the cook. She's barricaded herself behind the spice rack.
I simply inquired why the flour was alphabetized by texture.
She's been doing it that way since Napoleon had all his limbs. Choose your battles wisely.
Cecilia stepped into the room. She was not. Miles noted with some disappointment, wearing her armour of acerbic deflection. Today she wore blue wool, her hair tied back with a ribbon that looked like it had once belonged to a gift far more festive than she.
What brings you here?
I live here.
To the library, I mean.
I was coming to... I don't actually know. Possibly to escape my sister.
That bad?
She's convinced she's fallen in love with the vicar.
Isn't he the one who's afraid of horses?
And loud bells, and confrontation. He once apologized to a fern for brushing against it.
Well, that's practically husband material.
Cecilia didn't laugh, but she didn't leave either. They stood in silence. Outside, the wind tugged at the ivy crawling up the walls. Inside, dust floated in golden slants of morning light.
I read your pamphlet,
Which one?
the one with the unflattering description of a certain second son who mistook diplomacy for a fencing match.
You should know. I changed your name.
I recognized the incident in Naples and the insult to the Danish crown.
I didn't think anyone would remember the goat.
Miles chuckled.
To be fair, it was wearing a hat.
Silence stretched again. He could feel her watching him, measuring the distance between honesty and regret.
I wasn't trying to ruin you.
I wasn't trying to ruin Denmark, but here we are.
That earned a laugh. Quiet, honest.
I came here angry. I expected a frigid spinster with a grudge and too many cats.
I have no cats.
Just sharp words and scones that could fell a cavalry.
You ate 3.
I'm not saying I didn't enjoy the danger.
He turned toward her. She was watching him with an expression somewhere between curiosity and self-defence.
What do you want, Miles?
He didn't answer right away, because the truth was simple and complicated. He wanted to stay, not just at Greymore Hall, not just near its books and chaos and warm, biting conversation. He wanted her to look at him again the way she had last night, when she thought he wasn't watching. But instead of saying any of that,
For now. Tea. Later. We'll see.
Cecilia rolled her eyes, but she didn't leave. Instead, she walked past him, pulled a book from the shelf, and sat on the faded green divan like she had every right to command the room. And perhaps, Miles thought, she did. He sat across from her, said nothing more, and for a moment, Greymore Hall was quiet, peaceful, on the brink of something, and neither of them quite ready to admit it. Chapter 3. The trouble with hosting a party at Greymore Hall was that it required 3 things Cecilia did not possess in abundance: money, patience, and the ability to feign delight at the mention of cucumber sandwiches.
It's not as if we're planning a coronation. Just a small gathering of creditors and opportunists.
Miles lounged on the window seat with tea.
Investors. We're reframing, remember?
You're infuriatingly optimistic.
It's a survival mechanism.
Cecilia tossed a stack of seating charts onto the settee.
What are we even offering these people? A tour of our charmingly decaying home? A complimentary encounter with mildew?
To be fair, the mildew is quite atmospheric.
She threw him a look sharp enough to pierce linen.
You forget, people love to be entertained by dysfunction, as long as it isn't their own.
You make it sound like theatre.
Isn't all of society?
Cecilia sat across from him, smoothing her skirts with more aggression than necessary. Outside, the estate buzzed with reluctant energy. Hetty had commandeered the kitchens. Honoria was choreographing something vaguely Greco-Roman, involving an urn and possibly a swoon. The staff bustled. The dogs hid. Cecilia tried not to think about how Miles looked when he wasn't being insufferable. The way he read in the library, how he took his tea without sugar, but always offered it to her. That evening she hand-wrote the first batch of invitations. Ink blotted where she jabbed too hard with the quill. Miles, as he reads her guest list,
It's entirely possible we're about to put all of England's worst people into one room.
That's the point. Let them gossip. Let them speculate. Let them invest.
Shameless, I approve.
I've learned from the best. Do we have enough chairs?
No, Hetty is threatening to borrow pews from the chapel.
That actually might work.
Everything works if said with enough confidence.
Chapter 4. 1 week before the gathering, Greymore Hall transformed into something it had not been in years. Expectant. The air buzzed with preparation. Chandeliers dusted, carpet beaten, crockery unearthed from the cellar. Honoria rehearsed tea ceremonies with Duchess-level flair.
Tea is theatre.
You're a menace.
Hetty drafted every able-bodied soul for help. Even the vicar was conscripted to arrange chairs. Meanwhile, Miles turned the West Parlour into a war room, tracking budgets, RSVPs, and rejections worded too politely to be sincere.
Do you think the Duke of Manchester declined because of the weather or because of the pamphlet that said he resembled a boiled parsnip?
It was the parsnip. No one forgives that.
Still, excellent footnotes.
Cecilia smiled, despite herself. They fell into a rhythm. Lists became actions. Crisis became routine. And laughter, real, helpless laughter, began to echo through the halls. Late one night, the three of them sat around the kitchen table with sherry and tart crumbs. Hetty sighed.
We should do this more often. Sit around and drink things we can't afford.
You'd think we were very old friends.
Speak for yourself.
Hetty scoffed.
I still don't trust you.
I consider that a compliment.
Cecilia didn't speak, but she didn't look away. Chapter 5. The day of the gathering arrived with deceptive calm. A pale sun rose over Greymore Hall, gilding its crumbling stone in gold and making even the ivy look purposeful. Inside, it was chaos. Hetty shouted about puff pastry. Honoria had gone missing with a bottle of elderflower cordial and a length of tulle. The cat had claimed the guest book as her bed, and someone had tied a cravat around a banister, presumably in a moment of panic or celebration. Miles stood at the base of the main staircase, adjusting his cuffs and surveying the whirlwind.
This is either going to be a triumph or a masterclass in social catastrophe.
Cecilia appeared beside him, serene in deep green silk, her hair pinned with pearl-tipped combs. She looked like a woman who had never once stumbled. She looked, in fact, exactly as she had intended, untouchable. Miles, trying not to stare, said,
You realize you're the reason this is happening.
And here I thought you were just here for the tea and mutiny.
She gave him a look, dry, inconveniently fond.
Smile nicely. Keep the conversation light. Unless someone brings up goats, then change the subject immediately.
Understood.
The guests arrived shortly after noon. Carriages gleamed, silks shimmered. One woman wore a live parrot. No one asked why. Cecilia greeted them with the ease of a practised hostess, deflecting gossip with compliments so artfully phrased they bordered on poetry. Miles drifted at the edges, offering champagne like an accomplice, noting who laughed too loudly, who stared too long at the portrait of Cecilia's late husband. He found her in the conservatory, briefly alone.
May I steal you for a moment?
If you promise not to make me waltz.
No promises.
He led her out to the garden, the air cool and scented with rosemary. They didn't speak for a while.
I keep thinking I'll wake up and find this never happened, that it was all a very elaborate fantasy, fueled by mildew and frustration.
If this is a dream, it's an unusually well-catered one.
Why are you really here, Miles?
Because you didn't flinch when the world decided you were a scandal. Because you turned silence into speech. Because you make me want to stay.
Cecilia didn't move, didn't blink. Miles softly.
I'm not asking for anything. Just don't shut the door before I've knocked.
She nodded. Not an invitation, not a dismissal. Enough. Chapter 6. By morning the scandal had begun. Not a dramatic one, No broken vases or stolen kisses, just a hum of curiosity. Did you see how Lady Cecilia charmed Lord Fenton into a donation? Did you hear what Captain Everleigh said about Naples? Have you noticed how she's not quite what we were told she was? Which was, of course, the point. Cecilia stood on the front steps, teacup in hand, watching the last of the guests roll away in their carriages.
You did it.
Hetty remarked.
No fainting, no arrests, minimal property damage.
Give it a week. Someone will claim the cheese was seditious.
Hetty laughed.
Revolutionary brie.
Miles joined them, hair mussed from a morning of delivery wrangling.
Well,
Several pledges, one direct offer of patronage, one baroness who offered me her corgi.
that's high praise. She doesn't even like her children.
They stood quietly for a moment.
Thank you.
For what?
For making it bearable, even enjoyable.
Miles, grinning, said,
That might be the first time you've complimented me without a caveat.
Don't get used to it.
I wouldn't dream of it.
Later that day, Cecilia stood alone in the drawing room, straightening chairs. The house was quiet, settling. She caught sight of herself in the mirror. Same face, same eyes, same coiffure. But she stood taller, behind her.
I believe congratulations are in order.
We survived. No one died.
Admittedly, I had a contingency plan.
Did it involve bribing the bishop?
No, but I do have a surprisingly persuasive pastry chef.
She laughed, brighter than she meant it to be. He stepped closer.
I meant it. When I said you make me want to stay,
Cecilia's breath caught.
I'm not asking for a decision. I know what it's like to protect something so fiercely you forget how to let anyone near it.
She looked at him, really looked. Not the captain, not the scandal, the man.
You're difficult.
So are you.
You're impulsive.
You're terrifying.
I still don't trust you.
I still don't trust myself.
Then, quietly, without fanfare, they kissed. No orchestra, no gasps, just breath and warmth and something earned. And inside, for the first time in years, Greymore Hall felt alive. Chapter 7. 3 days after the party, Greymore Hall felt dangerously close to normal. The staff walked lighter. Hetty slept in. Even the cat seemed less judgmental. Letters arrived, investments, cheese supplier requests, thinly veiled gossip. Cecilia read them all at breakfast, pretending not to glance down the hall for Miles. He had gone to the village. Allegedly. But she missed the sound of his voice, the scuff of his boots, the quiet hum when he worked. Cecilia muttered to herself,
Pathetic. Utterly undignified.
Honoria asked, "Did you say something?"
No.
You looked wistful.
I looked contemplative.
You looked like someone whose corset is laced too tight, and whose heart has wandered off with a navy man.
Cecilia threw a grape. It missed. That afternoon, with no urgent catastrophes to solve and a dangerous surplus of quiet, she wandered into the west parlour and found a letter tucked beneath the ledger. Folded once. Her name scrawled in a hand she now knew by sight. She hesitated, then opened it.
Lady Cecilia, I thought I'd offer you the dignity of knowing where I'd gone before you were forced to ask Hetty or interrogate the footman. I've gone to London. Temporarily. There's a matter I need to settle, an inheritance twist, entirely boring but annoyingly necessary. I hope to return within the week. I didn't want to wake you, mostly because I wasn't sure I'd be able to leave if I did. I meant what I said, about wanting to stay. That hasn't changed, but neither has the fact that I'm still someone figuring out how to deserve that. Yours, regrettably absent, Miles.
Cecilia sat back slowly, the letter curling slightly in her hand. She felt many things. Annoyance, of course. He had left. He had not said goodbye. But also something quieter, something that curled beneath her ribs like warmth, rather than fury. She folded the letter and tucked it into her sleeve. When Hetty walked in with a tray of tea and a list of newly confirmed investors, she paused.
What's that look?
I don't know yet.
Hetty set down the tray, narrowed her eyes, then smirked.
He'll be back.
I know.
You planning to wait?
Cecilia sipped her tea.
I'm planning to finish the work we started, whether or not he makes it back in time to see it.
Hetty nodded once, the kind of nod only women who've been through fire give each other. Later that evening, Cecilia stood in the garden as twilight bled across the hedges. She looked up at the house, windows warm with light, laughter drifting from the drawing room where Honoria had roped the vicar into card games. It was a beautiful place, flawed, stubborn, resilient, like her, and for the first time she did not feel like she was waiting for something to begin. She had already begun, even if he took his time catching up. In London, however, Miles Everley was not catching up. He had arrived at his solicitors with two goals: settle the boring matter of his late uncle's land lease, and then return to Cecilia with nothing hanging over him. What he found instead was a woman seated in the office, sipping tea like she owned the city.
Lady Bramhall.
Miles said tightly.
She replied with a purr of amusement.
Captain Everley, still charmingly direct.
Their history was complicated, forged over a summer in Marseille that had been equal parts blissful and catastrophic. She had been a diplomat's widow, he a restless officer between assignments. They had burned fast and bright, and ultimately combusted. He had left with a promotion. She had left with secrets. And now she was here. She gestured.
You should sit. This won't be brief.
He didn't. His solicitor, Mr. Tombley, cleared his throat awkwardly.
There's been a legal inquiry regarding the estate in Wexford and the guardianship attached to it.
Lady Bramhall smiled.
You remember Sophie?
Miles stared.
That's not possible.
She's 6. The woman claiming to be her mother passed 2 years ago. She's been staying with me. But the will names you.
I never...
He stopped, closed his eyes, tried to count back the months.
You were in Marseille,
she said softly.
and she was very fond of you. The timelines align.
And you've kept this quiet for 6 years?
Lady Bramhall stood.
Because I wasn't sure. And because it wasn't time. Until now.
She can't be mine.
He said, voice barely above a whisper.
Perhaps not, but the will names you, and Sophie deserves to know. Or at least, you deserve to decide whether you'll be the man she believes you are.
He said nothing. Lady Bramhall crossed the room and handed him a ribbon. Pale blue, faded.
She tied this to the fence the day you left. She waited 3 weeks.
Then she was gone, heels tapping against marble, silence slamming shut behind her. Miles stared at the ribbon in his hand, and for the first time in years he wasn't sure who he was going home to be. He left the solicitor's office and wandered London's streets like a ghost, ignoring the invitations, the clubs, the gossip. He passed his own reflection in a shop window and barely recognised the man looking back. By the second night he was at Lady Bramhall's door. She was still striking, elegant, unreadable. She poured tea as though nothing had changed in a decade.
I assume you've thought of what I've said,
she said smoothly. Miles stood. He did not sit.
You said Sophie was my child.
She sipped.
Yes, she lived with her aunt. You were never told.
His heart thundered.
Why now?
Because she asked who her father was. And I was tired of lying.
It didn't make sense. The timelines blurred. They had only ever, once. And yet, he left with no answers and too many questions. Guilt, confusion. and a rising fear that everything he'd just begun to build with Cecilia was already unravelling. By the third day, he knew he had to return to Greymore, but not to pick up where he left off. To tell the truth. He returned to the estate with none of the lightness he'd left with. The carriage wheels had barely stopped when Hetty opened the front door and hollered,
"She's in the orchard. Try not to be an idiot."
He found Cecilia beneath the old pear tree, arms crossed, chin tilted.
"You're late,"
she said.
I had to settle my affairs.
"You didn't say goodbye."
I didn't think I could.
They stared at each other, the weight between them far heavier now.
"Well,"
she said. He took a breath.
There's something you need to know, and I'm not proud of it.
Her expression didn't shift.
I may have a daughter. I didn't know. I'm still not sure, but I intend to find out.
The silence stretched.
"Is that all?"
she asked.
For now.
She nodded once.
"Then I suggest you don't waste time."
He opened his mouth, then closed it, and when he turned to leave, it wasn't exile. It was consequence, and Cecilia let him go. Chapter 9. Cecilia. The orchard felt different. Cold, even in the soft wash of spring sun. The tree she'd once leaned against while teasing Miles about unripe pears now stood like a monument to things unsaid. She hadn't moved since he walked away. The wind stirred her skirts, but she was rooted. Stilled. A child, a daughter. She felt it first as shock, then anger, then something far worse, something clawed and ancient that whispered, "You let yourself believe again." She'd known it was too easy, known it couldn't last, but she'd wanted. Oh, how she had wanted. By the time she reached the drawing room, Hetty was waiting, holding a decanter and wearing the face of a woman who'd lived through war and didn't need the details to know how the battle ended.
"He told you,"
Hetty said simply. Cecilia sat down slowly. Numb,
"I think I'm angry."
she said, her voice too even.
"Or sad. I can't tell the difference."
Hetty poured the brandy.
"You're both. You should be."
Cecilia didn't drink, just held the glass.
"I was foolish."
"You were hopeful."
"Same thing."
Hetty didn't argue, but she reached out and set a hand over hers.
"We will weather this,"
she said.
"even if he doesn't."
Miles. The road to Lady Bramhall's estate was smoother than he remembered. Everything about it felt rehearsed, like he was being pulled into a chapter he hadn't written but was expected to perform. He stood in the front hall, staring at the oil painting of her late husband, and wondering if he was next.
"Come in,"
she said. The girl was there, 8, with hair the colour of ash and eyes that might have belonged to someone he used to be. She didn't speak, just watched him with solemn interest, like she was cataloguing him for later. He knelt.
Hello.
She blinked.
"Do you like lemon biscuits?"
He nodded.
Immensely.
She offered him one, then skipped away. Lady Bramhall stood in the doorway, arms folded.
"You see now why I wrote."
I see something.
He said quietly. He stayed for dinner, then overnight, and then he stayed longer. Each day he watched the child, Sophie, move through the house like a wild spirit made tame by books and buttered toast. She asked questions like riddles. She never walked when she could hop. She tucked in her dolls with the precision of a sailor tying knots, and slowly, impossibly, she began to trust him. They played chess, drew treasure maps. He repaired her wooden hobby horse and read her the wrong bedtime story voices until she laughed so hard she cried. By the third night, he was sitting in the nursery with a stack of fabric scraps, pretending he knew how to sew a doll dress. She watched him quietly, then said,
"If I didn't have a father before, and maybe you are one now, does that mean I'm not missing anymore?"
His throat tightened.
I don't know,
He said honestly.
but I think maybe we're both trying not to be.
That night, He sat at Lady Bramhall's desk and wrote the letter.
Dear Cecilia, I don't know what to say that won't sound like cowardice or apology. Perhaps it's both. I've stayed because she's extraordinary, because there's a chance she's mine, and if she is, I can't leave her again. That doesn't mean I don't think of you. I do, constantly, which is its own sort of cruelty. There's a version of this where I become the man I wanted to be beside you, and there's another where I do the right thing for a child who deserves better than my confusion. I'm writing to say, I don't know which version of me will survive this, but I'll be honest when I find out. M.
He folded it, sealed it, and left it with the house messenger. And still, he stayed. Not because he was sure, but because for once in his life he was willing to live through the answer, no matter what it cost him. Chapter 10. Cecilia. The letter arrived at twilight. It bore no seal, just a hastily scrawled C on the front, and a dirt-smudged fold that made it look like it had been clutched too long by someone too unsure. She opened it slowly, reading each line as if the paper might vanish beneath her fingers. By the end, her hand was shaking. She didn't cry, not at first. Instead, she walked into the study, shut the door, and stood by the cold fireplace like a statue learning how to feel. He was gone, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. He was already halfway out of them, and worse, he had begun to doubt them. That, more than anything, hurt, because she had trusted him with her softness, her future, her belief that perhaps, just perhaps, scandal wasn't the end of the story. Now she was the one left behind, again. This time by someone who hadn't needed to leave but did, who had chosen to sit in another woman's drawing room, to play father, to nest. She sat down, clutched the arms of the chair. Hetty found her like that an hour later.
What did he say?
She asked softly. Cecilia handed her the letter. Hetty read it, lips pressed thin.
I see,
she said. Cecilia's voice cracked.
Do you? Because I don't.
Hetty knelt, rested a hand on Cecilia's knee.
He's trying to be good, but sometimes men confuse guilt for honour and obligation for love.
I don't want a man who doubts me.
You don't have one.
Hetty said gently.
Not today.
Cecilia exhaled sharply.
Then I suppose I'd better stop mourning a future that never happened.
She stood, straightened her skirt.
I'll write the estate accounts myself. I'll finish the tenant proposals, and I'll host the summer festival without him.
And if he comes back?
Hetty asked. Cecilia looked toward the window, where the light had just begun to fade behind the hills.
Then he'd best have answers.
She didn't cry until after Hetty left, and when she did, it was quiet, measured, like every sob had been earned. The letter remained on the desk, but she never read it again. She didn't need to. She had already lived every word. Chapter 11. Cecilia. 2 weeks after the letter, Cecilia was back in circulation. Not London, not yet. But she'd accepted an invitation to a garden party in Ashmere, the kind of event she usually declined. Saccharine, social, sunburn-prone. But she needed something, a change of scene, a test of resolve, a stage, and perhaps, if she were honest with herself, an audience. Honoria had practically thrown clothes at her until she looked dangerous in rose silk.
You're not going to pine,
she'd said.
You're going to devastate.
So she did. She stepped into the garden like she'd never been left behind. Smile like honey, shoulders like armour, and almost immediately people took notice. Lord Eversley, recently widowed and not at all subtle, planted himself at her side.
I've always admired your clarity of opinion,
he said.
You've never heard it, she replied.
I've read it.
Ah, there it was. He knew.
The wasp?
She asked innocently. He smirked.
Only someone truly brilliant could make moral ruin sound that amusing.
She should have shut him down. Instead, she tilted her head.
It's a gift.
He offered her his arm. She took it. That evening, after too much wine and just enough malicious flirtation, she wrote. Not a letter, not a pamphlet. An essay, satirical, cutting, with a venomous charm that hummed beneath every line. The second son's moral dilemma. How to keep one foot in your lover's bed and the other in your reputational grave. She didn't name him, she didn't have to. It circulated within days. Cecilia claimed no authorship, but everyone knew. When Hetty confronted her, waving the printed page, Cecilia didn't blink.
He made me soft. I'm simply correcting the imbalance.
And what if he reads it?
Then he'll recognize himself.
Hetty sighed.
You're playing with fire.
I started with flames. This is just smoke.
But when Lord Eversley sent her a bouquet and a dinner invitation the next day, she didn't say no. She was tired of waiting for men to be ready. And for the first time in weeks, she didn't dream of Miles. She dreamed of applause. Chapter 12. Miles. The pamphlet landed in his lap like a lit fuse. He unfolded it slowly, already bracing. The second son's moral dilemma. How to keep one foot in your lover's bed and the other in your reputational grave. He read the first line, then the second. By the third, he was pacing. Her voice leapt off the page, scathing, sharp, heartbreakingly clever. It wasn't just anger, it was indictment. He read it all. Then again. By the end, he was gripping the edge of the desk, knuckles white. She had painted him as a coward, a man split in two, a weakling with charm and no conviction. And worst of all, she wasn't wrong. When Lady Bramhall entered the study, she found him hunched in a chair, the paper in one hand, a half-drained glass of scotch in the other.
Ah,
she said smoothly.
So it's gone to print.
She made a show of me.
He said.
Of all this.
She made art.
Lady Bramhall corrected, swirling her own glass.
Your tragedy, her prose. At least you were useful.
He glared at her, but she only smiled, soft and knowing.
Do you really think this was about you?
Isn't it?
She approached slowly, all silk and suggestion.
It was about power, Miles. You gave her yours, then left her to wonder what it meant.
He swallowed.
I left to do the right thing.
She purred.
And how terribly noble of you.
She stepped closer, close enough that he caught the scent of orange blossoms on her collarbone.
You don't have to keep punishing yourself,
she said, fingers drifting lightly along the back of his neck.
You could stay. Permanently. You've already made a place here. Sophie adores you.
She's not even mine yet.
He snapped, but his voice lacked strength.
And if she is,
Lady Bramhall murmured, her lips a breath away from his temple.
Wouldn't it be simpler to start again here? With someone who doesn't expect you to be perfect?
He didn't answer, couldn't. Instead he let her kiss him, just once. Brief, shallow, enough to feel something, but not enough to silence the roaring in his chest. He pulled back immediately.
I can't,
he said. She said nothing. He left the study before she could smile. That night he didn't sleep, and in the morning, when Sophie asked if he was sad, he lied.
I'm just tired.
But he knew better. He wasn't tired. He was furious. At Cecilia. At himself. At everything he couldn't undo. And maybe, somewhere deep down, he was afraid that the kiss had been easier than it should have been. Chapter 13. Cecilia. It had been 3 weeks since the essay, and if the social scene was meant to punish her for it, it had miscalculated entirely. Lady Cecilia Greymore was in demand. Her presence was requested at luncheons, garden walks, card nights, and literary salons. Her name, once whispered with suspicion, now drew admiration, fear, envy. The essay had burned through parlours like gossip with teeth. She'd received anonymous notes of congratulations. One viscountess called it deliciously unladylike. Cecilia pretended to be surprised. She wore velvet instead of mourning black, sapphire instead of modest ivory. She stopped pretending to be smaller than she was. And the men, oh, they noticed. Lord Eversley remained a regular fixture, but he had competition now. There was Mr. Radford, a playwright with ink on his cuffs and a talent for flattery, and Captain Dawn, fresh from some colonial nightmare, who saluted her as though she were made of battlefield glory. She danced twice at the Holloway Gala, once out of politeness, once because the waltz was her favourite and the ballroom was filled with people who remembered her as someone to watch, not pity. Honoria delighted in it all.
"You've become a legend,"
she said, draped across Cecilia's bed one evening.
"Half of them want to be you, the other half want to ruin you."
I'll take either.
Cecilia murmured, brushing out her hair.
As long as no one pities me.
She didn't mention Miles. She didn't read the paper. She stopped looking for his handwriting in the post. She was too busy remembering who she'd been before she let herself believe in happy endings. A force, a scandal, a woman with a pen sharper than any sword. When Lady Winfield offered to sponsor a reading of the Wasp's greatest hits at her summer salon, Cecilia said yes. When Lord Eversley asked to escort her to the theatre, she said yes again. She wasn't pretending not to care. She was learning to care differently, and for now, that was enough. Chapter 14. Cecilia. She hadn't come to London looking for trouble. She came for a publisher's dinner. A well-lit affair with too many hors d'oeuvres and too few interesting conversations. She was meant to smile, sip champagne, and listen to men talk about satire like they'd invented it. She did not plan to turn a corner in Covent Garden and see them. Lady Bramhall first, elegant as always, wearing a shade of wine silk that looked expensive even under the soot-grimed sky. And beside her, a child, Sophie, all boots and curls and curiosity. And then Miles. He looked thinner, tired, but not broken, not like she wanted him to be. He saw her before she could turn away.
Lady Cecilia,
Lady Bramhall said, as if the name were a compliment she'd grown tired of paying.
Lady Bramhall,
Cecilia replied with a nod that was pure theatre.
Captain.
Miles stepped forward slightly, hesitated, then inclined his head.
Cecilia.
His voice landed like thunder after a drought. Sophie blinked up at her.
Are you the lady who writes about bees?
Cecilia looked down, startled.
I suppose I am.
I like the one where the Admiral got caught without his trousers.
Lady Bramhall placed a gentle but firm hand on the child's shoulder.
Sophie, that's not polite.
Cecilia smiled, just enough to look gracious.
Don't worry,
she said.
He wasn't a very good admiral.
Lady Bramhall's mouth twitched.
Still stinging, are we?
Only when pressed.
There was a beat of silence. Miles looked like he might explode or vanish.
I didn't know you were in town,
he said quietly.
It wasn't announced in the papers.
He gave a small, sad smile.
Well,
Lady Bramhall said, gathering Sophie's hand.
We won't keep you. Come, darling. We're late for your lesson.
Sophie looked between them.
Will I see you again?
Cecilia's throat tightened. She knelt slightly.
Perhaps. The world's small that way.
Miles opened his mouth, then closed it. Lady Bramhall didn't look back. Cecilia stood in the street, heart pounding, the child's eyes still imprinted in her mind. She hadn't expected to feel that. She wasn't sure what that even was. Later that evening, as she sipped lukewarm champagne in a room full of men arguing about metaphors, a note arrived on a silver tray. It was folded once, no seal, Just her name in a familiar, infuriating scrawl.
Please, while you're still in London.
She stared at it for a long time, then tucked it into her sleeve. She wasn't ready, but part of her wanted to be. Chapter 15. Cecilia. The note weighed more than it should have. Folded once, tucked in her sleeve like a secret too dangerous to leave unguarded. She didn't read it again. She didn't have to. The words echoed in her mind like a dare. Please, while you're still in London. By morning, she still hadn't answered. By afternoon, she'd gone from stewing to pacing. Honoria, ever perceptive and criminally fond of theatrics, clocked the tension the moment Cecilia walked into their shared suite at the townhouse.
Let me guess,
Honoria said, perched on the window seat with a cup of strong coffee.
Mysterious note? Emotional angst? Smouldering regret?
Cecilia flung herself into the nearest chair.
You're intolerable.
I'm observant and bored. Spill.
Cecilia hesitated, then pulled the note from her sleeve and handed it over like a confession. Honoria read it once, then again, then folded it shut and stared at her sister.
So, are you going?
I don't know.
Do you want to go?
I don't know.
Honoria gave her a look.
Is this about Sophie, or about the fact that you saw him again and your internal organs forgot how to function?
Cecilia exhaled.
Both.
Honoria softened.
You don't owe him anything, least of all an audience. But if you do go, make sure it's because you want to hear him, not because you're still hoping to punish him.
Cecilia closed her eyes. She thought about Sophie's questions, her small hand, the way Miles looked like he might speak and shatter at the same time.
I don't know what I want,
she said. Honoria stood, crossed the room, and kissed her on the top of the head.
Then go find out.
That evening, Cecilia stood outside the hotel where Miles was staying, gloved hands clutched tight around a borrowed shawl. She didn't move, not for 10 minutes. Not until the butler glanced at her a third time. Then finally she stepped inside. He was waiting in the parlour. He stood when she entered. He looked like a man trying not to hope. Cecilia didn't smile. She sat down across from him. He cleared his throat.
Thank you for coming.
She waited.
I didn't know you'd be in town.
You wouldn't. We're not in the habit of informing each other of our travel plans anymore.
He winced.
Fair.
Silence.
I wanted to explain.
He said finally.
About Sophie, about Bramhall, about everything.
Cecilia held up a hand.
You may try,
she said.
But you won't charm your way out of this.
His eyes flickered.
I'm not trying to charm you.
Good, because I'm very tired.
He nodded, then began to speak. Miles. He hadn't slept, couldn't eat. For days he'd rehearsed what to say, on long walks, in cold baths, in the echo of the nursery while Sophie slept. None of it sounded right. None of it undid the kiss he hadn't meant, the time he hadn't written, and worst of all, the answer he still didn't have. Because he hadn't asked. He hadn't taken the test. It sat in an envelope on his desk, waiting, unopened, unsent. He told himself it was about propriety, about Sophie's dignity, about not treating her like a question to be answered by blood. But deep down, he knew it was fear. If she was his, everything changed. If she wasn't, he would lose the only good thing he'd done since leaving Greymore. And how could he ask Cecilia to forgive indecision? To wait for clarity he hadn't found the courage to pursue. He took a breath, spoke low.
When I left Greymore, it wasn't just about Sophie. It was about me being afraid that I'd ruined something before it began.
Cecilia's brow lifted.
Mission accomplished.
I deserved that,
he murmured.
but I didn't go thinking I wouldn't return. I went because I needed to know who I was when no one was watching. And when Sophie entered the picture, everything shifted.
She's lovely,
Cecilia said, carefully neutral.
She is,
He hesitated.
and I don't know if she's mine.
Her eyes flicked toward him.
I thought you said you hadn't heard.
I haven't, because I haven't tested. I haven't confirmed.
Cecilia was very still.
You didn't ask?
I couldn't.
He looked down.
I thought it would be cruel, to her, to Bramhall, and maybe because I didn't want the answer. Not yet.
A pause stretched between them.
And Bramhall?
She asked, voice cooler now. He swallowed.
There was a moment, brief, stupid. I didn't mean for it to happen.
Cecilia's voice was quiet.
Did you stop it?
Yes, but not soon enough.
They sat in silence again, the kind that carried weight.
I haven't come to ask you for anything.
He said.
Not forgiveness, not understanding. I just wanted you to know the truth.
Her eyes shimmered, but she didn't blink.
And what do you want now?
She asked.
I want to deserve you, whether I get to or not.
Cecilia stood slowly.
I'll let you know if I decide to let you try.
Then she left the parlour, and Miles, still seated, let the quiet swallow him whole. Chapter 16. Miles. The letter was still on his desk, unopened. Not from Cecilia. She hadn't written. This was from the physician, not the results. Those would take time. Weeks, perhaps longer. This was merely confirmation. The request had been received, the process begun, the delay inevitable. Still, even the envelope felt heavy with implication. 3 days had passed since she'd walked out of the hotel parlour with that unreadable expression, and in those 72 hours Miles had thought of nothing else. Not the estate, not the weather, not his dwindling credit, just her silence, her eyes, her promise that she'd let him know. He hadn't heard a word, which meant she was deciding, and if she was deciding, then part of her hadn't completely walked away. He wanted that part, but he didn't know if he still deserved it. The sound of footsteps snapped him from his thoughts. Sophie appeared at the door, dragging a tattered stuffed rabbit by the ear.
"Are you mad at me?"
she asked. His heart twisted.
What? No, why would you think that?
"You've been quiet,"
she said.
"and grown-ups only go quiet when they're mad, or when someone's dead, and no one's died."
He knelt in front of her.
I'm not mad, Bug.
"Then why are you sad?"
Because I don't know if you're mine. Because I think I failed at something I didn't even know I was supposed to protect. Because I'm afraid I let the best thing in my life walk away. He didn't say any of that. Instead, he said,
Because sometimes grown-ups do things they regret, and it takes time to fix them.
She looked unconvinced, but she hugged him tightly anyway.
"Okay, but you have to stop being sad soon. I'm not good at cheering."
He smiled.
Deal.
Later that evening, when Sophie was asleep, he lit a candle, then sat at his desk. He didn't open the letter, but he did pick up a pen and begin writing the only letter that mattered, the one meant for Cecilia, one that wouldn't be about answers or apologies, but a choice. Chapter 17. Cecilia. It had been nearly a fortnight since the hotel parlour, 2 weeks since she walked away, heart a tangle of rage and longing, boots echoing on marble like punctuation marks she couldn't revise. She'd received no letter, no word, and that, more than anything, told her what she needed to know. He still hadn't taken the test. She didn't know how she knew. She just did. Some instinctual tick in the silence. If he had done it, he would have said so. He would have sent some proof. Not to earn her back, but to earn back his own integrity. But silence was uncertainty, disguised as politeness. She was back at Greymore Hall now. The hearth was lit, the hallways draughty, the roof still grumbling with rain. Honoria had returned to her own pursuits, leaving Cecilia to her books, her ledgers, and the long, quiet afternoons she once craved. But now they pressed in too close. In the mornings she walked the grounds. In the afternoons she wrote, not pamphlets, nothing sharp or mean, just long, unfinished letters she never sent. To him, to Sophie, to herself. And at night she lay awake wondering if indecision was simply another form of abandonment. The letters from London still came, of course. Gossip travelled faster than post. Lady Winfield wrote breathlessly of Miles appearing at the Langford luncheon alone, claiming he seemed haunted but handsome. Another friend sent word that Lady Bramhall had begun introducing Sophie as simply "my ward," which might have meant anything, or nothing at all. Cecilia read each letter once, then tucked them beneath the lining of her drawer like dried flowers too pretty to burn. What she wanted was something different. She wanted,
I've done the hard thing. I've faced the answer. I'm not running.
but she wasn't going to beg for it. Let him choose. She was done doing it for him. Chapter 18. Miles. The hills rolled by in a blur of green and ash, trees bare-limbed and brittle against the sharp spring wind. Miles sat alone in the train car, one gloved hand curled around a letter he hadn't sent. This one was different, not desperate, not clever, just honest. He had rewritten it 5 times, each version less polished than the last. In the end, he had said exactly what he meant. I haven't received the results yet. I don't know if Sophie is mine, but I do know I want to be her family. And I want to try again with you, if you'll let me. He'd signed it plainly. No flair, no poetry. Just his name, scrawled like a prayer. He never sent it. Instead, he waited. And then, finally, the envelope arrived. Heavy. Sealed. Delivered by hand, with the physician's signature pressed into wax. He didn't open it for hours. It sat on the desk while Sophie played with her dolls and Lady Bramhall read a letter from a cousin in Vienna. The air was quiet. Too careful. He opened it alone. She wasn't his, not biologically, not by blood. He read the sentence twice, then once more. It didn't change. The room didn't tilt. He didn't collapse. But something inside him shifted, like a door closing gently but firmly behind him. He thought he'd feel loss, but mostly he felt certainty, because what the paper said didn't alter what he already knew. He loved her. She was his, not by accident or inheritance, by choice. He told Lady Bramhall that evening. She didn't blink, just sipped her wine and said,
Then you've got nothing left to hide behind.
And she was right. So he packed his things, not in anger, not in haste, with a kind of reverence, as if he were sealing away one version of himself to go in search of another. Sophie hugged him tightly before bed and asked if he'd be back by her birthday.
Yes, but not as a maybe.
He took the early train, and as Greymore rose on the horizon, he didn't rehearse a speech. He didn't draft another letter. He simply placed the unopened one, the one he never sent, inside his coat pocket, and prayed he wouldn't need it. Chapter 19. Cecilia. She didn't know why she went to the drawing room that morning. Habit, maybe, or curiosity, or the odd whisper of intuition that sometimes hummed in her chest like bees in a wall. She wasn't dressed for guests. Her hair was pinned in a hurry, her boots unlaced, her shawl haphazard. She looked like someone halfway through her first cup of tea, which, to be fair, she was. But the moment she pushed open the heavy oak door, she felt it. That shift, that pull. Miles stood near the hearth, as if summoned, as if she'd wished too hard and the universe had blinked. He turned when he heard her. Neither of them spoke. She closed the door behind her. Slowly.
You're here.
He nodded.
I am.
Her arms crossed, not in anger, but because she didn't know what else to do with them.
I wasn't expecting...
I know.
I thought I'd have more warning.
I didn't want to give you a chance to say no.
She blinked.
That's bold.
It's honest.
The silence that followed was a strange one. Not cold, not entirely warm, just charged. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded envelope.
I got the results.
Cecilia's breath caught.
She's not mine, not by blood.
Something flickered across her face. He couldn't tell what.
But I want to raise her. I want to be the one she looks for at recitals, bonfires, and holidays. I want to be the reason she knows she's safe.
He held the envelope out.
You don't need to read it. I'm not here to prove anything.
She didn't take it. Instead, she stepped closer.
Why now?
She asked.
Why not write?
I did, 5 times. None of them were good enough. And then I realized I didn't need better words. I needed to be brave.
She looked at him then, really looked, and in his eyes she saw not the captain or the scoundrel or the second son, just the man, and maybe, finally, the answer. She took the envelope, didn't open it, placed it gently on the table.
I don't know what this means yet,
she said.
but I know what I don't want.
He waited.
I don't want to keep waiting to be disappointed.
He stepped forward.
Then let me show you something else.
She looked up, and slowly, deliberately, she nodded. It wasn't a kiss, not yet, but it was a beginning. Chapter 20. Cecilia. The spring gathering at Greymore Hall was not originally intended to be a celebration. It had started, as most of her events did, as an exercise in damage control, a fundraiser / distraction / polite show of confidence. But somehow it had become more. There were blooms in the gardens again, fat with colour. Hetty had convinced the baker from Windermere to contribute lavender scones. Even the roof, still stubbornly leaky in the west wing, seemed to have caught the spirit of optimism and held off raining through the drawing-room ceiling. Miles had been helping all morning, quietly, steadily. He didn't hover, he didn't rush. He moved beside her, not in front of her. They hadn't made any formal declarations. There had been letters exchanged, quiet evenings reading together, the kind of silence that spoke of comfort, not confusion. He had ridden into town every week to see Sophie, and after her last visit, Cecilia had found a small hand-drawn picture tucked into one of her notebooks. It was 3 stick figures, one with a sword, one with a book, and one with enormous curls. She'd kept it. Now, as the guests arrived, Cecilia found herself by the terrace doors, watching Miles adjust a lantern that had gone askew. He didn't see her, and for a moment she let herself see him fully. This man, this unexpected anchor. She stepped outside. He looked up.
Well, you clean up nicely.
She arched a brow.
Are you saying I didn't before?
I'm saying you terrify people less in Periwinkle.
She laughed.
Only slightly.
There was a beat. Then he said quietly,
Thank you.
For what?
For letting me come back.
She tilted her head.
You didn't ask.
No, but you didn't send me away.
She looked out over the lawn, where guests mingled, sipped lemonade, and pretended not to whisper. Then she looked back at him.
Don't give me a reason to.
I won't.
He offered her his arm. She took it, and together they walked into the hum of conversation and candlelight. Not perfect, not certain, but together, at last. Epilogue. 1 year later. Sophie insisted on wearing her crown. It was made of pressed wildflowers and one very stubborn thistle. Miles had tried to negotiate a more traditional bonnet, but Cecilia had whispered,
Let her rule.
and that was that. The adoption ceremony was quiet. Lady Bramhall had not objected. In fact, she'd sent a single line in reply to Miles's letter.
She was always yours. Thank you for finally noticing.
Cecilia hadn't cried during the signing. She had been too busy making sure Sophie's boots were buckled and that the clerk spelled her name correctly. With a C, not an S. But later, when Sophie curled into her side on the carriage ride home and called her Mama without thinking, Cecilia had needed a full minute to speak again. Miles had simply taken her hand. They were back at Greymore now, the sun stretching lazily over the hills, the orchard beginning to show its early blooms. Honoria had orchestrated a cake that was more architectural feat than dessert. Hetty had declared herself Sophie's god-aunt and was currently showing her how to flirt her way into second helpings. Cecilia stood with Miles beneath the ivy-covered trellis near the garden's edge. She watched Sophie run, trip, giggle, and bounce back up as if the world belonged to her.
She's fearless,
Cecilia said softly.
She's yours.
Miles replied. Cecilia smiled.
And yours? Husband? Legally, emotionally, completely. She's going to write pamphlets about us one day, you know?
Miles groaned.
Let's hope she uses a kinder pen.
They laughed, and as Sophie looped around them again, trailing wildflower petals in her wake, Miles pulled Cecilia closer. Not because she needed support, but because love finally had nowhere else to go but home.
Thanks for listening to tonight's story. If it brought you comfort, curiosity, or just a little bit of calm, go ahead and give it a like. And if you'd like more tales like this, narrated just for you, don't forget to subscribe. We've always got another story waiting.